Hey there, Doug here. Happy Star Wars Day. So this week's bonus episode is kind of different. So a few months ago, a guy reached out to me. His name's Damon Henderson, and he goes, "Man, I really like your podcast. I would love to collaborate with you someday." So I was like, totally, yeah. So he goes, a month later, he reaches out. He goes, "So my podcast is called Simply the Best. And on our podcast, what we do is we do top 10 lists. And I would love for you and Jamie to do a top 10 list and send it over." And I was like, "What kind of top 10 list?" And he's like, "How about like the best sequels of all time?" So me and Jamie, through texting back and forth for an afternoon, because we haven't watched every sequel yet. We've seen a lot. And so we wanted to go by ones that we've seen to make sure it's fair. So obviously you can Google a list, but our list is not like any that you're going to find on Google. But we think we did a pretty good job. And then through our journey of watching sequels, maybe in a year or two, this list could be totally different. So on Star Wars Day, did one of the Star Wars sequels make the list? Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 7? Maybe it didn't even make the list. So you're going to have to listen. It's coming up. And make sure you tweet at us or follow us on Instagram or Facebook. It's at Sequels Only. Tell us if you agree. Tell us if you don't agree. Just tell us anything. Just follow us. And now here's our top 10 best sequels of all time. Hello, listeners of Simply the Best. My name's Doug.
And my name is Jamie.
Our podcast is called The Good, the Bad, and the Sequel. It's a movie podcast where we're talking sequels, and we do it in 2 parts. The first, an interview with an actor or someone involved that made the film worth watching. And a second, a discussion of the sequel, what they got right, what they got wrong, and how it could have been better. We've interviewed the likes of William Sadler, Tiny Lister, Robert Hayes. You can check out all the people that we talked to in the movies that we reviewed at our website, sequelsonly.com. So Damon, the host of Simply the Best, found us, reached out to us and said, "I need a top 10 list of the best sequels in your guys' opinion." So we said, yup. And this is it. So this is The Good, the Bad, and the Sequels. Top 10 best sequels of all time, in our opinion.
And I just wanted to say that, all the originals were really good, but these 10 sequels were just awesome.
Yeah.
So starting at number 10, we have Terminator 2. Terminator 2 took place around 11 years after the first one, not movie-wise, just in movie timeline. And man, did they up their game. I mean, the budget had to be quadruple the amount of the first movie. You got John Connor now, about 11 years old. You got Linda Hamilton back. And now you have a Terminator that is a little older and wiser, but a little softer in the heart with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Patrick as a liquid metal evil Terminator, just destroying havoc. He can't die in anything he does because he keeps going back together. The kill count is great, but they also have an epic Guns N' Roses song, "You Could Be Mine," which makes the movie. You have some classic one-liners. I mean, you have
"Hasta la vista, baby."
You have "I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle." And they got the kid who's trying to tell Arnold, I don't want you killing anybody. And that office scene where he's shooting everybody up, and he must have shot about 15 to 20 cops. And then the kid got mad at him, and Arnold goes, "Don't worry, they'll live." This movie was just awesome. It was just awesome.
Yeah, this movie was really cool. Great sequel. And we actually interviewed someone, Don Fauntleroy, who was a director, cinematographer. He actually did camera work on this movie. And he said with James Cameron, when they did the helicopter crash scene, they actually did that scene and nobody was rolling. So they had to do it again.
So they wasted a helicopter.
They wasted a helicopter, but second helicopter might have turned out better. So now number 9. Horror has to be on this list because we are a big fan of horror. We've covered a lot of horror, and we have a lot of horror coming up. So number 9, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. So this franchise came out swinging when they put out the sequel for Nightmare 2, Freddy's Dead. Just wasn't up to snuff. People hated it, and you really thought, Freddy, the whole franchise could have been dead. They had no Nancy. She didn't return, and Freddy's in some kid's body. Just didn't work. Wes Craven had nothing to do with that movie. So for the third one, he returned. The folks at New Line did what they had to do to get Heather Langenkamp back to reprise her role as Nancy. And the rest is sequel history. This movie has some amazing effects. You have 2 stars that were, in the making at the time, Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne for this movie. He's actually Larry Fishburne. And this film is where Freddy really turns into the character that he is in film lore. He's a comedian, amazing one-liners, my favorite.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big breaking TV. From the prime time, bitch.
That was classic. And I also love the fact that they had, each, as a kid, when I watched this, each person, in the dream had a special, superpower.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just, cool to see. It was like the original X-Men.
It was. I think it was.
And at number 8, we have Rambo 2. So First Blood was such a classic movie. It was, good storyline, but he really didn't show too much of his skill. Rambo 2 just takes it so much further. They drop him off in Vietnam, and this is where you see where Rambo's combat comes into play, and his skill, his tenacity. I mean, he was going there to do one job, just to take pictures of these, prisoners, but he couldn't leave them there because he's such a warrior that he decided to come back and save them. And instead, they leave him there. And of course, we have, the bad guy from Karate Kid in there.
Martin Cove.
The scene when they capture Rambo, they're electrocuting him, and he grabs that microphone and he goes, "Murdoch, I'm coming for you." You see the veins popping in his arm, the anger in this movie. It's a real American movie. He's just a warrior. And I think the movie was awesome.
Yeah. This movie's so good that I have the movie poster in my room because it's just that great. So now on to number 7, another horror movie, of course. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which should have been the last film, but of course that didn't happen. Jason Voorhees is such a staple in film lore. And this movie, you thought it was going to be done? Nope. 8 more movies after this. And we actually reviewed and interviewed 2 Jason victims from Jason Takes Manhattan. So this film had Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis. And man, when he was young, I know Corey Feldman now is a little whacked out, but man, he could act. His role in this movie as Tommy, when he shaves his head, he's hacking Jason at the end. Pretty amazing. And this movie has some great kills. Bruce Mahler, who's in the Police Academy franchise, he's in this movie, gets killed by Jason. And Crispin Glover's dance moves in this movie alone landed at number 7 on our list.
I wonder if this was the downfall of Corey Feldman's wackiness, because, he had to play a wacky kid in this movie. And then he's kind of a wacky guy now. So I wonder if this really started it all.
It could have. But after this, man, he did so many movies because this is like towards the beginning of his reign. But yeah.
All right. Well, at number 6, we have The Godfather 2. And I mean, this movie's just great. I mean, the first one, told the story of, just life in the mafia, how it is. Second one starts off with Robert De Niro. I mean, he wasn't in the first one, and he plays a young Don Corleone, shows how he became the Godfather, which is so awesome. It started off as a child. He escaped to America. Then he went back and he became the Godfather just by killing the main guy in the beginning. So just to show you how it started was great. Then you have Michael Corleone in present day, really advancing the family. He's going to Vegas. He's going to Hollywood. He's going to Cuba. He's really expanding, but he's also dealing with marriage issues, and he's got to deal with his brother who, is a little slow. He's got to deal, with him going behind his back without maybe realizing it. And of course, you have the famous line, a few lines of "keep your friends close, but your enemies closer." And, "I know it was you. You broke my heart." I'm not going to say who he said that to, but it's a pretty emotional scene.
Yeah. Like Jamie mentioned before, these movies on the list are great movies. But I think with these 2, Godfather 1 and 2, you have an amazing, epic movie. How do you follow that up? With Godfather 2, and they did such an amazing job. So number 5, Dark Knight. Of all the movies on this list, this is the only one that I actually saw in the movie theater. And to this day, it has the best opening scene I have ever seen. That whole opening scene when they show like the city skyline and you see the window blow out, and just that whole bank scene in the beginning of the movie is so good. Heath Ledger's darkness and his portrayal of Joker is the greatest one ever. I love Jack Nicholson's for like the comedy aspect. Heath is funny, scary, all in one, and dressing up like the nurse and blowing up the hospital.
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
Bale and Ledger just bring it the whole movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially with Heath Ledger. I mean, a lot of people said, he got the award for, because he died and they felt bad, but it had nothing to do with that. He would have gotten it either way. He brought it to that role. I mean, he became the Joker and he did an awesome job.
Yeah.
All right. At number 4, we have Rocky 2.
Oh yeah.
And this is one of my favorite sequels. Rocky 1, good story. You watch it now, it's a little slow. It just shows you the rise of a nobody, getting that title fight. But in this movie, he shows a lot of range. Now, he doesn't want to fight him again, but Apollo Creed can't take, having a draw. He's got to show that because Apollo Creed was cocky. So he has to fight him again. He has to prove that he is the best. And, his heart's not into it. He's more into, dating Adrian and, you can see the relationship and getting married and, now she's pregnant. And let me tell you, every time I see this scene, she's in a coma, she gets sick and you see him trying to read to her and it's very emotional, kind of slows down a little bit. And then she wakes up. And this is before he wasn't even training much, but he wakes up and she looks at him. She goes, "Come closer to me." And she goes, "Win, Rock, win." And then you have Mickey. Go ahead, Doug. What does he say?
"Oh, what are we waiting for?"
That, to me, I get goosebumps every time. And now you hear the music, Rocky music, and he's training hard. And the rest of the movie, just, a big boxing match. But just that whole scene and that training just gives me goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. Just that bell ring after she says win. And he just, oh, God.
And not to mention the end scene. And he goes to her. I don't know if you want to do the impression. What did he say to her after he wins?
See, it's hard to do it. I won the fight. No, but this movie, the first one, like you said, it left you kind of unsatisfied because it was a draw. But man, this movie is so freaking good. The training scene, him chasing the chicken in the beginning of the montage, not catching the chicken. Then at the end, he catches it, running up the steps in Philadelphia.
All he needed was Adrian. He just needed Adrian to give the okay.
Yes, Rocky 2, classic. And now number 3, Aliens. Sigourney Weaver comes back. This isn't like one of those sequels that came back a few years afterwards. It was like 7 years later for her to come back and reprise her role as Ripley. And this movie has such an all-star cast. You have Michael Biehn, who is just coming off Terminator, Paul Reiser, a young Bill Paxton, and so many more. This movie set up, which could have been a perfect third film, but it just went to absolute shit. And that's why this movie was almost too good. This movie has some of the best action scenes, especially when the aliens are just ripping everybody up and just like the big ambush. Ripley's not in there. And you get one of the greatest lines Bill Paxton ever uttered. And that guy, amazing career.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Yeah, this movie is like nonstop action. I mean, it was just awesome. I loved it. And I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen 3, 4, and 5. So I stopped after this one. You can't follow number 2 with anything else. You really can't. All right. And speaking of number 2, we have Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
Now, I know there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there and there's a lot of Star Wars movies, but to me, Empire Strikes Back, nothing holds a candle to it. I mean, you have a lot of developing stories in this one. You have the relationship between Princess Leia and Han Solo going to the end, from fighting the beginning of the movie to her telling him, "I love you," as he's getting frozen. And he says, "I know." That's a big line. Then you got the relationship between Yoda and Luke, which Yoda's first screen and Luke's training. And it just, Yoda was such a big, impactful part of the whole series. Then you also got Darth Vader. And Darth Vader, to me, this is one of his best movies he was in. He torments Luke physically, mentally. There's a few bombs that drop because Yoda says there's another out there. We don't know who until the third one. Yeah. We have Darth Vader, who reveals that he's the father of someone. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil that. We have, Princess Leia screaming, "It's a trap." I mean, there's just action galore. There's just, drama. It was just from start to finish. There's no slow point. It was just awesome.
Yeah, this is my favorite Star Wars movie by far. The action just from the beginning, the snow fight scenes, the tauntaun. You just got so much to it. And like you said, Yoda, Luke. Just the movie has so much in it. When you really think about it right now, there's so much that goes on.
There's so many again, do or do not. There is no try comes from there. I'm not afraid. You will be. I mean, there's so many lines. It's just an awesome great writing. And from considering when the movie came out, so ahead of its time.
If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will.
Oh, yeah. All right. So now for number 1, just do a quick recap. Number 10, Terminator 2. Number 9, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. 8, Rambo 2. 7, Friday the 13th Final Chapter. 6, Godfather 2. 5, Dark Knight. 4, Rocky 2. 3, Aliens. 2, Empire Strikes Back. So what could be number 1? And we put a lot into it. And I think really what put this film number 1 was just the hardware that it won from it. And that, of course, is Silence of the Lambs. So it is a sequel to the 1986 film Manhunter. This film has Anthony Hopkins just playing a role of a lifetime and Jodie Foster playing the role of a lifetime as Clarice. This movie, like I mentioned, the hardware that it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, and Best Actress. And my favorite line in this entire movie is,
"A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti."
Anthony Hopkins classic movie, and that is why it's our number 1 sequel of all time.
And, again, for a movie that has Anthony Hopkins, who's not even in the movie that much. If you take his total screen time, I forget where they said how much he was in there. It wasn't a lot of time.
Yeah.
And he won. I mean, that's how good the movie was. I mean, it was just, yeah, like I said, the acting was, this put Jodie Foster totally on the map. And, you ask anybody about Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, what their best movies are, they're going to go right to this movie.
Oh, yeah. Great. So that was our top 10 list.
All right. So what do you think? Do you love us? Do you hate us? Well, no matter what, make sure you subscribe. Tune in this Thursday. This week's film is the Dirty Harry sequel, Sudden Impact. We had a lot of fun talking about it. We know you'll love it. So don't forget, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. Review, rate, share our podcast. Tell your friends. And then also check out our website, sequelsonly.com. It has all of our content on there.